in the spirit of Women's Month, we continue to celebrate women in politics on the show. Tonight, we put a spotlight on the impact of women in politics. Now we're joined by Margaret Arnolds, who is the Treasurer General of the AIC. She's also the MMC of Finance in the city of Johannesburg. We're also joined by Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, who is the National Chair of Rise Mzansi, but she's also the MEC of Agriculture and Rural Development in the Gauteng province. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. I think, Vuyiswa, let me start off with you. Looking at your interesting background, I mean, you were once the CEO of the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners. You were in sales and marketing at KISUA, and the director and co-founder of Other Girls. Why did you choose politics?
Well, Natasha, I think politics chooses you. And in all honesty, I got to a point where, I felt that I needed to do more for this country. We have so many different challenges, chronic poverty, unemployment, inequality. These are things that you have to face, whether you are in business, whether you are in civil society. And I just really felt like it's time that people who have expertise, people who have experience, maybe in other fields, actually get stuck into the work of governing and leading our country. And so that is why I raised my hand and why we even formed Rise Mzansi. It was to really create a platform for a broader range of people from society to get involved in governance.
Ms. Arnolds, you were also an activist, gender-based violence and femicide activist in El Dorado Park. You've got a long list also. You were in the APC, I think in 2010. And then you joined the AIC in 2019, and you've been with them still. Why politics? Why not just stay as an activist in El Dorado Park?
I joined the AIC in 2014.
Okay, great. Thanks for that correction.
I'm still an activist. I still deal with gender-based violence and femicide. You're also very well aware that I am a survivor of GBV. And I've always been an inquisitive child. Ever since matric, I've always been wanting to know what happens outside and why it's happening and why I'm not equal to others and why others are not equal to me. And I was part of June 16, 1976. I was in matric that year. And I've always wanted to understand why some people are rich and why some are poor, why some are suffering and why, And that has actually pushed me into politics. And I could never, ever keep a 9-to-5. I was teaching and I was 3 months in the classroom and I decided, no, this is not for me. And I then went into politics and this is where I am. And I think I've honestly grown in the politics, but my activism is still there. You're aware that I have a NGO called #MyLifeMatters, so I spoke out. And this is to deal with the GBV. So the activist in me will never die. It will just continue.
Seeing that you're a survivor of, gender-based violence and femicide, and now that you're in the politics space, what challenges do you face, as a woman within politics, aside from patriarchy, aside from pull-it-down syndrome? I mean, there's this concept of perception, that if you're too strong as a woman in politics, you're labeled as this. If you're too soft, you're labeled as this.
It's not a perception, it's true. And I think we are the ones that allow it, we as women. Because I think, when we go to conferences, we vote for the men.
Yes.
We don't vote for our own. And that's where we give them an advantage. And I think if we can start thinking the other way and assist our sisters within the parties, we could go a long way. It would never change, because whether it's a white man, a colored, or an African, or an Indian, they always believe that you have to be pregnant, you have to be in the kitchen, you have to do all those things. So I do believe that as women, we can get past it and we can be assisting to change the entire system. It's sad if you look at it, that yesterday for the past 2 days, I've been at Salga. I'm part of Salga, right? And we had the daughter of the late Grasha, Ms. Mashal, there. And she actually explained to us what she had gone through. And up until now, she cannot even get over it. But there was no one to support her. And that is our problem. We as women should stand together, support each other, so that we are able to complete each other. Because currently we are competing and we are not completing each other. And that is our problem.
Lisa, do you agree with Ms. Arnolds, but also as a woman, in politics, how do you contend with the issue of perceptions around who Vuyiswa Ramokgopa is?
Yeah. No, I think the points that have been raised by the MMC are very valid. And obviously, she's been in politics for a considerable amount of time. But, our country is one in general that is very patriarchal, and where the power, be it the power of capital, the power of society, the religious leaders, tribal leaders, traditional leaders, and also politics. Those systems of power interface with each other, and it is part of, really what shapes society and what shapes your role as a woman in society. And so while I firmly agree that, as women, we have to stick together and we have to support each other, but it's not just ours to change the status quo. It's important that the people who also sit in positions of power and who occupy those positions of power are very mindful of that fact, and that they also enable that change to happen. And so I think the male allyship is a very important component. This is not a man-bashing session. I will proudly say that some very important opportunities that have opened up for me in life have been opened up by men who have been able to recognize their own privilege and who have been able to say, I'm going to use my privilege to actually open up a space for you. And when I walk through that door, I make sure I don't turn back. And I think that's really also what we need to encourage in society and encourage with those who are already in positions of power.
How does Vuyiswa Ramokgopa deal with the issue of voter bias? I think you both know very well that we have a high number of women who actually registered to vote. Around 15 million women out of 27.79 million, which actually represent 55 million. You go back to the elections, it's women who actually voted more. But you look at the composition of males in cabinet and parties, and you're like, what happened? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it is a very curious outcome. And I often say that, patriarchy, like racism, requires both the oppressor and the oppressed to participate in that system. And the reality is that, like the MMC says, we ourselves as women will be the ones voting for the man that we know is an abuser, for example, or the man that we know has done nothing to advance women. And I think that is something that we really need to assess. But I will say that I certainly in the engagements and public meetings that I've had, I've often been very well received by women. I think what we need to move to now is saying, how do we translate that into electoral power and outcomes? And I think it's also very much about changing the culture of politics. The culture of politics, and it sounds abstract, but I'm saying the way we do politics here in South Africa is often quite repelling for women. And I'm not, for me, we've come into this space and we're saying we want to redefine politics so that it's more accommodating for women and the participation of women and the voices of women to be heard in the agenda setting and in the leadership of political organizations.
Ms. Arnolds, for a person, a young woman who's watching you right now is eager to change the world, would you encourage them to join politics?
Definitely. Definitely. I think it's currently, or it has always been, something that is inclusive in every aspect of life. And to me, yes. And if you want to make a difference, join politics and make a difference in the life. You don't have to be corrupt, you don't have to do any other thing, but if you are focused, you are able to move. And I'm proud to be sitting next to someone that's much younger than me and that is able to move and want to change. So I do believe, yes, they must become politicians.
And your personal journey, all these years that you've been a politician, highs and lows?
I think I started off by joining a civic organization. You know, it was called Sowejoka, where we said write off the arrears and things like that. But I was always the one that had to carry the books and do this and do that. I never really had the opportunity to be, you know, the person. But I persevered. And I looked at what everybody else was doing. And the next day, I would do it myself. And that's how I moved to where I am. It was difficult. It was not easy. I left the APC, and I still have respect for Themba Khodi. I left the APC because it was a political party that was only for people if you either came from Limpopo or you came from Mpumalanga, and there was no space for women. And me being a colored woman, there was definitely no space for me. I could not grow. I could not grow there. And I then joined the AIC, where I was embraced, although it was more of Xhosa people, but I was embraced, and I could be Margaret. And I could do, and still up until today, I could do what I wanted to do. I could give my ideas, and my ideas would be, you know, it would be taken into consideration. And I think that has given me, you know, the leeway to say I want to be, and I can carry on. But also, Margaret, the activist, the inquisitive child that wanted to know what goes on in every area, that has also pushed me, and that also carries politics. But the other sad side of Margaret was Margaret, the person that was raped, Margaret, the person that was abused, and that also made me to go back. But the day when I came out, I could speak out, I could do what I wanted to do, and that has actually maybe grabbed myself and has gotten people to embrace me. Because I think I've changed many lives of many young girls, people that has been abused, and has said, if she could move
then you can
from being an ordinary person to have been the speaker of the city, to be in MMC and occupy all those positions. I think Mbali knows, and you also know the chains in council and all those things. That has brought me, and I do believe that I've had a very, very colorful political journey, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
And before we get to the MMC part, Vuyiswa, your highs and lows in this journey of politics.
So my journey has been a lot shorter, and in fact, this role is my very first time in a political and informal politics, you know. So I'm 2 years into it. I think my highs was really just the campaigning, you know, for the first time. I've lived in Gauteng my whole life almost, but I saw more of this province during the campaign than I've seen in my entire life. I saw places that I had never even known existed. I met people from all walks of life, you know, different wealth, income brackets, different social status, different races, and I got to really fall in love with my province again. So that was a real high for me. I'd say lows, not too many lows. You know, I think politics is a roller coaster, and they say a day is a long time in politics. But yeah, I think the lows, I haven't really dwelt on the lows. So far, you know, I think I've had a good journey in the last 2 years, and I'm hoping that we can continue on this trajectory.
And when you were on the campaign trail for Rise Mzansi as the national chair, there's one thing that caught my eye, the community development aspect, and how you'd actually go to communities, encourage them to plant, you know, imfino, spinach, and all that.
Yes.
And now you look at your portfolio, it was as if it was, you know, prophetic.
No, it is.
You're the ABC of Agriculture and Rural Development now. Your key priorities.
So, I mean, you're right in saying one of the core things that we campaigned about was around the hunger crisis and wanting to end hunger. And this portfolio has given me an opportunity to really give life to that. So, I mean, the three real core priorities is one, to fight urban hunger, and to make sure that, you know, we empower communities to grow their own food, to also make an income out of whatever it is that they are growing. And that the second part of that is around commercialization. You know, 70% of the farms not just in Gauteng, in the country, are so-called small-scale farmers, but they only account for 10% of the output in terms of the agricultural output in the country. So we need to change that. We need to commercialize some of these small-scale farmers to get them to be major players in the industry. Basgaba emerging for their whole lives. They must emerge at some point and become real players. And then obviously the third one is really just fighting unemployment and the massive unemployment challenge. But for us, it's about creating sustainable employment through industrialization and agro-processing. Gauteng is so well located as an export hub, as an industrial capital of the country. We need to reopen those factories. We need to get business people and producers into those factories, producing agricultural products and exporting to the world. And that's the way we deal with unemployment.
Okay. Ms. Arnolds, wrap it up for us quickly. Your main priorities as the MMC of Finance in the city of Johannesburg.
I'm only there 1 week. No, I think what we need to do, and we had a quick discussion earlier on, we need to look at how we do revenue collection. We need to ensure that we have a right billing system, and also to look at the indigent policy. I think those are the things that we need to look after. And it would assist, if we can collect revenue, it would assist in all the other departments of the city. And I hope that we will have the residents of COJ work together with us, because we can't do it alone. But also businesses also need to come to the party and start paying for whatever they use. Otherwise, we are going to be killed.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining us on Politics Wrap. We hope to have future interactions with you.